Good afternoon and welcome back to another episode of Truth and Share. I'm your host today again, Rohit Krishna. Today we have a familiar face joining us again, Dan Plashkes, CEO and founder of S&P Data.
Hey,
welcome again, Dan.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking.
Good.
So, Dan, today's episode is, I think a pretty special one, right? We're going to talk about unintended consequences of COVID-19.
Yeah.
It's taken up, the center stage across everyone's life this year, and it's posed a lot of challenges, but also opportunities to, individuals and businesses alike. But we want to spotlight today sort of that impact specifically on businesses. Question number one, Dan, being an entrepreneur yourself and, having built multiple startups, I know you're very passionate about small businesses and, the impacts and effects that, the economy can have on them. Can you tell us why you feel so passionate about the subject?
I do. So, first of all, I think there's been unintended consequences of COVID-19. And it's funny, Today I listen to CNBC a lot. And Joe Kernan said, hard to believe that we're almost now a year into it. No one thought it. So, we can be critical of government and their actions. And I think it's pretty easy in the United States to be critical of the lack of support for small business through the payment protection plan, that politics got in the way. I certainly believe that.
Absolutely.
But no one thought it would go this long, but it has. And the reason I'm so passionate about small businesses, I've started everything from scratch.
Yeah.
I'm actually think that that's my first comment. If you've never had, this morning I was listening to a woman that's been recognized for her diversity in the energy field as a startup, and she said the best time to go to a bank is when you don't need money and you establish a relationship. I mean, we've all had banking relationships, payroll issues. I mean, we all have the same issues. I don't care how successful you are, and we've been successful. But there's a very fine line between success and failure. I'm a bit of a skeptic when I see the large businesses. Some of them are clients, of course, which are great. It's such a growing field, this small business, people now staying at home, starting their own businesses. It's cost to
spike
start
almost this
year. Oh,
year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like pets, right? You might as well start something up. You can go onto Shopify, start a business.
Absolutely.
So, people certainly have a side hustle, but I'm really passionate about it, and I think that there's been unintended consequences that have been really negative.
Right. Yeah, it's been an avenue for a lot of folks who have been impacted by the pandemic, a different opportunity for them to maybe realize some of the, what used to be their dreams and now has become their reality, right? Good, so thank you for that. I think the next question is sort of, we know there are a lot of different effects the pandemic has had, right? What do you think just specifically for small businesses those effects have been?
Yeah, so I think that there's been an adverse effect to small business. And I think that the unintended consequences of government actions, and it's not just once, it's happened repeatedly, is it's driven consumers to big box stores.
Right.
This essential services piece has been a really big deal. They're deemed essential services. I think that they've increased profits. I mean, every one of us has tried to buy a paper towel.
Right.
I really feel so bad. The streets are littered with closed businesses. These businesses have done everything that they've been asked to do.
Absolutely.
They've been they've opened outside in the Northeast when they've been told they have to open upside. They've put plexiglass. It's really, really been a kind of a tragic story. And then they get told they have to get closed, whether it's in Canada, we've seen it in California where I live.
Right.
That's really tough on them, and yet you see the big box stores open. So that really bothers me. I think the way that I would handle it, and I don't want to be political, I support the masks, I support so much testing. We have great ideas at S&P Data we'll talk about for testing that we're doing, real testing, but at the end of the day, at this point, survivability of businesses is also paramount. And so I share this opinion with some people, and there's people with the opposite, but I bleed for these people. And I think that they should be allowed to have customers the same way anyone else should. Right. And they've, as long as they're adhering to the proper social distance. I don't know whether the employees want to work there. That's another issue.
Right.
But because, as you know, we've had trouble getting people into a facility.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we get some to come back, They want to go back home. So, but assuming all being equal, and you're in survival mode, these businesses have been cut off, and they've done everything they've been asked to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And for us, it's been, fortunate, right? If I could say that we've had the ability to deploy remote workers and, take advantage of the continuation of our business. And, while the initial impact, we felt, I think we were able to recover from it in a very real way. And, in fact, come up on the positive side of it, post the initial announcements of the pandemic. So, that kind of leads me to my next point, right? So we're at the end of the year now. It's just around the holidays. Spirits are, depending where you are, they're either up or down. And we do have, news of a vaccine around the corner. A lot of markets of, the UK, for example, have already released the vaccine.
US too yesterday.
US too yesterday, yeah, thank you. And so, two of our major markets, Canada and the US, right? Both have vaccines around the corner. What do you think the future looks like for businesses in the post-vaccine world?
Yeah, so by the way, excellent question. Very difficult to answer. Here's what we're assuming in S&P. You mentioned a few things. When we look at S&P data, guys, we can't forget, we're sitting on millions of dollars in leases.
Right.
And the places are empty, right? So we did get, as you know, certain fiduciary transactions back on site. But again, then the pandemic hits again and people have gone home. So, we're sitting on millions of dollars. We have been fortunate in that we've pivoted very quickly and efficiently to the home. But I believe, as you know, so you asked me post-pandemic, there's going to be, we heard it today with Google as an example, announcing that they're extending work at home till September 2021, but they expect people to come into the office. Yep. So there will be a new normal. None of us know exactly, but there are a certain segment of the population that want to come into the office.
Right.
We think applying it in our business, we're going to have, truly work from anywhere. We're going to have people that will want to come in. There's been a bias, we talked about the unintended consequences of small business. There's been unintended consequences to consumers too.
Yeah,
not all the people have fast broadband.
Yep.
In fact, it's proven that minorities in areas have worse broadband. They can't even put a desktop requirement that we look at. And as you know, we're passionate about diversity and inclusion. We have 80% diverse workforce. So another issue is the new normal. The new normal is we're going to change.
Yeah.
In our industry, we were never one of those, but you're not going to have 2,000-3,000 seat centers.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to have spacious areas. You're going to have a workforce that chooses to work at home. You're going to have people that come into the office, and you're going to have different applications.
Right.
The applications will be that are behind the firewall will probably be, around more complex with financial requirements. As you know, I've said there's been a honeymoon in terms of financial transactions.
Yeah.
The scrutiny that we would get behind a firewall now would be much higher.
Yeah,
you can't bring it, as you can't bring a cell phone in. You probably need a dedicated area. But the new normal is people won't want to work on top of each other. So, I always talk about why is there curbside pickup?
Right.
I don't know if any of you shopped. So in unusual experience, we're at Christmas time that you just mentioned, holiday time, you're buying gifts. You're standing outside a store. It's weird. But the idea is that why is there outside service? Why is there curbside pickup? It's because people are willing to work with people that they can trust and have been tested. They don't want people coming in. That they can't be tested. So as you know, we're working with a blockchain technology in our company where we actually people will have their digital wallets and we can locate. Yeah. The environments of the future, it's going to be like
a digital health card, basically.
Right, Rohit. But yes, and the future is going to be just like the same as 2001.
Right.
You wouldn't get on a plane today, Rohit, without security. You may hate it, the TSA,
absolutely.
But you're not getting on a plane if nobody's checked.
Right.
You're not going to get on a plane if you don't feel secure. You won't get on a plane that's bumper bar. They're going to probably take out some seats and planes. There's going to be adjustments to the new normal. So how does that affect, we talked about small business. Even that affects small business, the density of their facility, that the intended consequence will be half of what it was.
Right.
So
and
they
it ultimately impacts sales, traffic in the physical locations as well, right?
That's why we've been targeting delivery companies, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a natural.
Yeah, and then I think it's also important to mention that many of the clients that we work with, their applications were natively built for brick and mortar and on-prem work, right? And now that we're migrating and we have a lot of new variables, like you said, broadband is one of them. Where let's say it's a low-income or a rural area, you have a much bigger impact from lack of high broadband connections
Correct.
and bandwidth speeds, right? And so that's obviously had a huge impact on our business. We deal with it every day now. We're recommending solutions. We're bringing in other companies to help us deliver a better experience for the full cycle of the customer, and ultimately create that same brick and mortar experience, but also remote. And I think it's interesting because there is a divided world right now in terms of what the future is going to look like. As you said, there's no real certainty behind it, but I think the general consensus is that remote work is here to stay.
Yeah,
right?
in some form for sure.
Yeah, absolutely,
definitely.
And so that's interesting. And what do you think the future holds for S&P specifically?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's well, first of all, I feel so fortunate that we are alive and well.
Right.
It's not been easy.
Yep.
As you know, to fully transition your business overnight, it's not been easy, and we've adapted. I'm pretty optimistic on the future. We're going to do another podcast. We're going to talk about, is 2020 the same as 2000? I think it is.
Right.
I say that from a capital markets. This pandemic, got it, but there's a lot of good. People are at home, and they've learned to trade stocks because,
right.
Now you've got the retail segment. That's had an effect on our clients. We've seen a massive acceleration of direct to consumer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, these small businesses, the negative is their storefront, is going to be a storefront, but they have the opportunity to compete. Now they're going to have to beat someone like an Amazon that has the best service
online,
in the world.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, the online. So the world is your oyster. So, listen, it's hard for people to be overly optimistic if you're a small business. It's hard for people that are sitting at home and don't have proper broadband. I'd like to think that no person will get left behind
Right.
in the future, and that we have a better quality of life. I think
the world will adapt, right?
The world's adapted already, right, Rohit? I mean, people are going to enjoy their quality of life. Rohit, you're not going to be willing to line up for an hour and a half to come into the office and an hour and a half to go back.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? That was the life people lived.
Yeah, especially when now the realization of being able to in effect roll out of bed and get on and get working within a span of 4 or 5 minutes, it's changed the way we perceive work and life in terms of the balance between the two as well.
Yeah, listen, I think that for S&P data, globalization of our industry, I mean, my goodness, the Philippines, I think it's brought a lot of questions into the instability of the network.
Right.
I have a lot of friends in the medical field that think we could be a pandemic away again. But,
right.
There's been destabilization. So what we do, I think, is very important.
Yep.
I think that the way that we think of the work from anywhere and bringing people either behind a client's firewall or ours, combined with working at home,
Yep.
that's no employee left behind. I think this is very
absolutely.
sound thinking. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity coming out, the direct-to-consumer of telemedicine or e-commerce. So it's an exciting future. It's going to change. I think quality of life is going to be better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think as you said, things have already adapted. I think they're going to continue that way, and it's going to bring some pretty, different ways of approaching and managing your life and your work, right?
Rohit, things are going to go back. Everything goes in cycles. In 1990, I keep going back to start, but it's true. In 1999, it looks like the world's crashing. In 2008, it looks like the world is crashing. Everything always goes up and down. But I do think, my message is that we have this has been a life-changing event. And we're not going to be the same as we were before. And, of course, incredible work done by companies like Pfizer, Moderna, those type of companies. These are great discoveries, Lilly. But at the end of the day, behaviors have changed.
Absolutely. And so, while I think that was a really good concluding statement, I do have one more question for our viewers and listeners at home. And that is, you talked about how fortunate we were and are to continue to have our doors open and continue to bring on new customers and serve our existing base as well. If you could reset the clock and go back to, February and March of this year, what would you have done differently as a response to the pandemic?
Wow, that's a tough question. So, well, first of all, I think we responded as best we can. But our view was short term like everyone else's, right?
Right.
So, if I had, there used to be a song, if we could turn back the hands of time. If we could turn back the hands of time, and I knew this, I would have done a lot of things differently. Operationally, I would have had time to look into things like PCI compliance. As you know, we gave everyone hardware, and now we have a hybrid, which is really great for people where we actually help them rent their device, bring your own device, and we can lock down that computer. So there's so many things we found through trial and error. It's easy to reflect who would have known. In our case, we probably could have really pushed the at-home model sooner. We had done it before. We were ready. So there's a lot of things we could have done differently. That, again, I think that at the end of the day, as I said to you, I have a real, I'd like to help small business. I know we can. As you know, we build programs for small business.
Absolutely.
So our clients are large clients, but I know I can help what we call the long tail segment.
Right.
Those people, provide them services and competitive. And obviously, we got to be grateful for SaaS and things like that people can incrementally grow without making the investments. A great time. So great opportunities, but huge threats. I don't know that I answered your questions perfectly. I have never thought about what I would have done differently necessarily, but I have thought about, how quickly we adapt. And we adapted well, and we survived, and we were in survivability mode. As you know, you were here.
Yeah,
we were hunkered down.
Okay, good. And I think that the future is bright in spite of, what people may feel. And I think your kind of thought process and trajectory around the support of small business is the right one, because with so much emphasis on moving to small businesses, there's definitely an upside for companies who are supporting that move as well, right? So appreciate your thoughts, Dan, on this episode, which was our unintended consequences of COVID-19.
Right.
That about wraps up our episode for today. So thank you to our viewers and our listeners at home for tuning in to our podcast, Truth and Share, where it's everything you always wanted to know, but were afraid to ask. And remember, folks, the truth shall set you free.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for listening.
You bet.